Welcome to On the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, and we are coming to you tonight with a very special episode of On the Verge because for the first time in over 2 years, we have opening day rosters for minor league baseball. The Orioles have announced their 4 full season affiliate rosters for the AAA Norfolk Tides, AA Bowie Bay Sox, High A Aberdeen Ironbirds, and the Low A Delmarva Shorebirds. So Nick, Bob, and I are on the air tonight to break down those rosters, discuss some of the players and the notable assignments, as well as some of the surprises, and some of the players who will not be on opening day rosters. So we'll have all of that in tonight's show. But first, On the Verge is brought to you courtesy of Mercer Floor and Home Carpet One. Mercer is a third-generation family business. It was established in 1959 and is located on Main Street in beautiful, historic downtown Westminster, Maryland. For all of your flooring needs, think Mercer. So tonight's episode will be focused exclusively on the release of the 2021 minor league rosters, which the Orioles unveiled on Friday for all 4 of their full season affiliates. We've been waiting for this day for a while, and now it's here. So before we get into our really detailed analysis, I'll start with Bob here. What's your reaction to the fact that we have the rosters in hand now?
Just relief and that it's actually coming. You know, you heard rumors maybe it's going to be delayed even more, but it's finally here. It's finally real. We knew it was coming, but it's not real till those rosters are released, and we're days away now, and it's exciting.
Yes, we have minor league baseball back. When those rosters came out, praise Steve Molesky for tweeting out that article and putting those together. I'm going to say there was zero work done the last 3 hours of the afternoon at the office. I'm just going to say that right now. Pouring over these rosters. This is fun. We have real rosters to talk about. And in 4 days or so, we've got real baseball to talk about. So let's dive into this.
Yep, and that's what we're going to do tonight. So we'll start off in Norfolk, where, as we had expected for most of the offseason, this team is stacked with pitchers. Keegan Aiken will be starting out the year in Norfolk, as will Zach Lothar, who recently made his debut with the Orioles. Alexander Wells, another pitcher who, like Lothar, was added to the 40-man roster over the offseason, will be there. And a few other names to note, the knuckleballer Mickey Janis, the back flip reliever Dustin Knight, Isaac Madsen, who was one of the pitchers acquired in the Dylan Bundy trade between the 2019 and 2020 seasons. And then Spencer Watkins, who you may have heard on this show back in February, has broken camp with Norfolk's roster. So we'll get into the position players there in a minute, because that's also a good group. But this, as expected, the pitchers here are pretty good.
Yeah, I was expecting the starting rotation. I mean, we don't have a set rotation, and we know down in the minor leagues, and I've seen some others comment that within the system that the Orioles are going to do a lot of that piggybacking. You're going to see guys go 3-4 innings, and then they might bring another starter behind them. So there's no set rotation, but I mean, we can look at this roster, the AAA roster at least, and put together a 5-man rotation, which I figure probably behind those 3 you mentioned, Aiken, Lothar, and Wells, you probably got Tom Eshelman and maybe Josh Rogers. I was expecting a little bit more of a stacked starting rotation, to be honest, but you got 3 top 30 prospects there. I mean, just a hand clap to Josh Rogers, I think, just because, I mean, he has 2 Tommy John surgeries. He struck out 7 guys the other day in that alt-site game. So it's great to see just him back on the mound. But yeah, the bullpen, I think, is full of, I don't want to call them quad A guys. There are a lot of those. But guys like Connor Green, I think, could be valuable bullpen pieces at the major league level. He's shown flashes like that. Can Cody Carroll turn things around, or is that dream dead? Who knows? Now, Eric Handhold showed some flash in that alt-site game. A lot of good numbers there. I think just knowing the Norfolk roster from years past, the floor has risen here. So, I mean, if the Orioles have to dig and get to that shuttle and pull guys off that Norfolk shuttle, then at least they're guys with major league experience a little bit more.
Yeah, and a note that I think we will see as we talk about all these rosters is that obviously Elias is kind of slow playing this. It seems like they are assigning people as if it's 2020, going right after 2019, at least to start. Hopefully that, that promotion process gets started a little bit quicker, since they did get some development in the past year or so. But yeah, AAA, I think we thought maybe Bruce Zimmerman would be there, but obviously he's doing okay at the major league level. And Kevin Smith, I thought would start at AAA, but he's in AA. We'll get to that. But yeah, like you said, it's awesome. Josh Rogers made it back. Friend of the show, Spencer Watkins, could get some starts. you got some veterans like Fernando Abad, but like you said, I'm interested in Connor Green, Eric Handhold, and Isaac Matson in that bullpen. I swear, every time I saw a box score come up for those alternate site games, Eric Handhold went like 1 or 2 innings, striking out 80% of batters. Similar with Connor Green. It's just, I don't know if it's good to get excited about those guys, but they could at least be useful arms somewhere down the line. Cody Carroll, I've learned my lesson. Never getting hyped up about him again. But yeah, there's interesting names all up and down. Just Jay Flaw. We just got a taste of his flavor at that was terrible at the major league level with his debut. But yeah, it's for a AAA, backup for your first dip into the. I don't know where it's interesting. That's what I'll say.
So I should know that before we get too far into this, we do have Steve Molesky's piece at Masson with all the rosters listed over on our Twitter feed at BSL on the Verge. So if you have any questions you want us to ask or answer while we're on the air live tonight, go ahead and send that our way. But best Norfolk roster in years. This is one listener comment we got here. And I think that the fact that this is a really good roster is also reflected in position players. In particular, for me, you're going to have Yusniel Diaz and Ryan McKenna there. Diaz is a prospect that we're waiting for to get to Baltimore at some point this year. McKenna is a guy that has gotten some major league time already because of some injuries to the Orioles outfield. Jamai Jones, who came over the Alex Cobb trade in the offseason, and from the stats we saw at the alternate site, was really hitting the ball well, will be part of Norfolk's infield, along with some other notable names, including Richie Martin, Mason McCoy, Rylan Bannon, Tyler Nevin, and Ryan Ripken. And then behind the plate, a guy that I know that all three of us are intrigued by, Brett Cumberland, will be back there as one of 3 catchers on the roster, joining Taylor Davis and Austin Wins.
Yeah, unfortunately, Nick Schufa, one of my pet players that I've been paying a lot of attention to, especially watching Severino and Cisco behind the plate this year. Unfortunately, he has a broken hand, so he will be out of action for a little while.
Yeah, I think looking at this roster, the defense is going to be really good with Jamai Jones and Mason McCoy and these guys, Richie Martin, even Rylan Bannon around the infield. That's going to be fun to watch. Like we had, this definitely is the best Norfolk roster we've had in a long time. And looking at, I pulled up last year's roster again, and it's guys like Ty Block, Jake Reinheimer, Zach Vinci days. Those are fun. Like Jace Peterson's, Jeffrey Ramirez's, these guys. Look, this is, we're not saying this Norfolk Tides roster is going like undefeated. Durham is a stacked AAA roster. If you check out that roster, this isn't that type of roster, but comparatively speaking, it's a much deeper roster. I think the microscope's going to be on Yusniel Diaz for sure. A lot of people are anxious to see him show out a little bit this year. I think Ryan McKenna is going to be a lot of fun to watch. If you're watching Norfolk Tides games this year on MILB TV, or if you head down to Norfolk, that outfield plays like double the size of a normal outfield, I feel like. And Ryan McKenna's got the tools to play out there. So he's going to make a lot of flashy plays as well. And I do want to note one thing. We mentioned his name before we came on the air, but there's a guy, maybe a new Cesar Valdez. Manny Barreda is a pitcher on the Tides roster. He's been in Mexico for the last 3 or 4 years. So maybe Michael Elias found another one. Who knows?
Yeah, they clearly have a scout down there at all times, apparently. But the thing I like about the position players is I think at a moment's notice, if there's an injury or a trade or anything like that, I think 1 through 9, this lineup could be, any of them could be called up to the major leagues, and you're not going to miss too much of a beat. Like they're going to at least hold their own and have a place. We already saw it with Ryan McKenna. Obviously, we're waiting for Diaz to come up. Richie Martin's been there. Rylan Bannon, Jamai Jones, we're waiting for them. Tyler Nevin. All these guys are solid. Even Chris Shaw has some major league time. So that's what I like about it. That's what you want in a AAA team.
What I really like about this roster is the flexibility factor, because you have a couple of middle infielder or a few middle infielders in Bannon, Jones, McCoy, and Martin, and you can move them around a little bit. So I'm guessing that Bannon's going to have to get most of his at-bats at third base, just because you're going to have the other 3 players there. But you have the flexibility, because Jamai Jones has time in the outfield, to put him out there if you want to get Mason McCoy into the lineup on the same night. You can move it around so that if you want to experiment with Richie Martin at second base before you bring him up for a test run, which is something we discussed on our last show, you can do that. So there's a lot of flexibility here. And then you have guys like Tyler Nevin who can play the outfield as well. So here's a good question from a listener we just got here. Norfolk Tide player was the most to prove. I'll let Nick start with that one.
There's a lot. Let's see.
Good question. It's a good question.
My gut instinct says Yusniel Diaz, the most to prove. I think my gut says Yusniel Diaz just because, a lot of people still view him, and I think he still is the centerpiece of the Manny Machado trade, and that trade, it was what it was at this point. And he was such a highly rated prospect when the Orioles got him, and now we've seen him passed over. We've seen him continue to struggle down in the minor leagues. Not really struggle. He's been hot when he's healthy. It's been the injuries. We'll say that. I think a lot of people have not written him off, but we talked about prospect fatigue a lot with him, and I think that's settling in harder and harder with him. So I'm going to say Diaz.
That's a good answer. I could agree with that. I'll shout out Richie Martin, who we talked a lot about on the previous episode. I think he's going to want to make a mark. And if you look in the bullpen, I think guys like Cody Carroll, Evan Phillips, these guys are kind of on their last legs here to try to make their mark. So I would say those guys.
I think that Diaz probably is the one with the most approved just because of the level of scrutiny, if you will, around him because he is the centerpiece in the Machado trade. We didn't get to see much of him in 2019 because of injuries, although he was productive. So I think he has the most to prove, but I also think that there's going to be some competition with that middle infield. And while I mentioned the flexibility, you still have to see, what can you get from a guy like a Richie Martin or a Jamai Jones, knowing, and as we'll discuss in a minute, that you have some pretty good middle infielders further down the system this year that will be at Bowie or at Aberdeen that could be knocking on the door of AAA later in the year. So I think if you're a middle infielder at the higher levels of the system this year, not only are you going to be competing to hopefully make the major league roster at some point, but to fend off any competition that's going to come from the lower minors.
Absolutely.
The other name I would throw out there too is Keegan Aiken, since he's starting down in AAA now. He led the Orioles, if I'm not mistaken, in wins above replacement last year, at least according to Fangraphs, I think. And I know that's not saying a whole lot about Keegan Aiken's numbers there, but this is a guy who I thought we all expected to be in the back end of the Orioles rotation, and he didn't make the opening day roster, and now he's got this injury. He's chopping potatoes in the morning for breakfast. I don't know what he's doing, but and the fact that he really struggled in spring training, I think he has a lot to prove as well.
He needs to get to that major league level so he can afford a personal chef to make him breakfast.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I do think Aiken is another one that's fair to throw in there. I expect we're going to see him before too long. But the thing that I really want to see from Aiken starting off in Norfolk is he's got to cut back on the walks. And I know that he's never going to be a guy that has pinpoint command, but the walks were way too high in spring training. And I have to think that played a factor in the Orioles not feeling comfortable starting him on the opening day roster, especially when that schedule was so front-loaded with Red Sox and Yankees games.
And even in AAA in 2019, he struck out a lot of guys, but the walk rate was really higher up than his previous years in the organization.
Yeah, so good roster in Norfolk. They, like all the other Orioles affiliates, will open next week. So if you can get to Harbor Park or you have an MILB TV subscription, be sure to check them out. Or if you're an Orioles fan that happens to be in another one of the AAA Southeast markets, maybe you can see Norfolk on the road this year. So going down the Bowie now, where some interesting names here in the pitching staff. I'll start there. Kyle Bradis, who was one of the pitchers acquired in the Dylan Bundy trade, someone we talked about a lot a couple of episodes ago when we previewed the pitchers in the minor league system for this year. Gray Fenter, who was chosen by the Rule 5 draft, chosen in the Rule 5 draft by the Cubs, but was returned to the Orioles during spring training, will be there. DL Hall, who, depending on who you ask, is either the first or second best pitching prospect in the farm system, will be making his Double-A debut. And then Brennan Hanafy will be there as well. So those are some of the notable names. And I'll start with Bob, just the Bowie pitching staff. We all know we're excited to see DL Hall. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on him, but then some of the other pitchers that will be in the rotation, the bullpen there as well.
Yeah, it's a very solid rotation. I'm even more excited to see DL Hall now after watching Shane McClanahan pitch for the Rays the other day or yesterday. That was something to see. Hopefully DL Hall can at least resemble that in some way. You got Bradis, Kevin Smith, who reasonably could be in AAA. He's starting in AA. Maybe it's something to do with who was it? Alex Fast or Eric Longenhagen, who said that he was having trouble getting that slider over for strikes. You got Nick's boy Brandon Hanafy getting his chance here. I like that. And Cody Sedlock, kind of surprised he's back in AA. Thought he might be in the AAA bullpen. I'm hoping Ofelky Peralta, the fact that they've pushed him all the way up to AA, says they are converting him to relief, and he can just let it fly and hopefully, move up to AAA into the majors before too long.
Yeah, I love this rotation. Like I said, DL Hall speaks for himself. We did just talk about Kyle Bradish in our pitching preview episode, and I think that's my excitement for Bradish is only fueled because like the next day, MLB Pipeline released their camp report that they're doing team by team. And when they released the Orioles report, and it was very high on Kyle Bradish. Lots of good words from I think it was Jonathan Mayo that put that together. Matt Blood had a lot of good quotes in there talking about he views Bradish as a guy who you can kind of slide up towards the Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall type prospect status, which I think is awesome if we actually get that. So that's definitely going to be exciting. Of course, Hanafy. But yeah, Kevin Smith, I think I want to see what we got. I mean, we traded Miguel Castro to the Mets for him, and this is a guy who the Mets said could have been their fifth starter this year. So, we'll see what he gets. A lot of these bullpen arms, I'm guessing because there's just so much depth like that. Guys like Abad, Connor Green, there's so many of those guys in AAA roster. Maybe that's why a guy like Cody Sedlock is in Bowie. I mean, he had all those injuries. We know he struggled early on in his career, so maybe they're letting him just kind of sit back and relax in Bowie, get his feet wet there again before moving him up to Norfolk. Ofelky Peralta, I mean, it's been 2014 he joined the Orioles as a teenager, and he's never been above Frederick. He spent the last, 3 years, I think, in Frederick. So he's finally in AA, but I think that does speak to what the Orioles think about him. If you're in the same level, A-ball level for 3 straight years, you have a new regime come in and they keep you and then promote you, maybe that says something about him. I think he's the guy who can probably touch 100 or come real close to touching 100 too. And then, just some of these other guys like Tyler Irwin is a guy I mentioned before I really love. Gray Fenter, Reed Hayes are all relief options with, I think they have like a skill set or two. And I'm going to watch also Cameron Bishop is one just because I think he was a decent draft prospect when the Orioles took him. And he was good in the lower minors. And then he, just like Blaine Knight and Brendan Hanafy, struggled in high A. So I'm going to watch him and see what he does. Although I don't know what exactly I'm expecting from Cameron Bishop, but he's there too.
So with DL Hall, what are some of the things that you want to see from him this year? Because with Hall, we have heard about how he has not thrown a lot of innings. This is going to be a tough year for him to stretch his innings out. So starting with Nick, what would you look at as success for DL Hall?
100-mile-an-hour strikeouts. Bob mentioned it. Shane McClanahan. I want to see that. I mean, that could be his future. Just the walks. I mean, we talked about his numbers, how the kid has a whip of like almost nothing, despite walking almost 5 guys per game throughout his minor league career. So it's just the walks. I've said before, I love his personality. I like his demeanor on the mound. He's got all that, but can he stop walking guys? That's number one.
Yeah, I think he's going to get about 5 innings per week for the next 2 months or so. So if he can get 100 innings under his belt, keep those walks down, and just show off the stuff that he's clearly been working on in the offseason, I think the sky's the limit. I think he'll be in AAA by midseason, hopefully, and then maybe he can get a taste out of the bullpen at the major league level. Although I think we know by now they're probably going to wait till May of 2022.
Yeah, have mentioned this before, but it's worth noting again, he is Rule 5 eligible over the offseason. So even if he does not debut in Baltimore later this year, we could see him added to the 40-man over the offseason and set up potentially an early 2022 debut, but we got to get through 2021 first. And looking into this list of position players in Bowie, they have the prospect that everybody wants to see, which is Adley Rutzman. He will be back there behind the plate. But then the other notable name that stands out here is Taron Vavra, who was acquired in the Michael Givens trade last year. So before we get to that, though, the position players, we do have another question here, which is who leads Bowie in strikeouts?
That's fun to think about.
I mean, it's got to be DL Hall's the leader in the clubhouse, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
well, 5 innings a week. I'd say Peralta, if he gets enough innings out of the bullpen, he could be a dark horse.
I want to say DL Hall. I'm gonna go easy route. I can't deviate from that.
I'm going to go DL Hall with Kyle Bradis as the dark horse. I think it could be neck and neck between those two, and who knows, if one spends more time in Double-A than the other, they might get it by default. But I'll go with DL Hall as well.
Yeah. Vivek coming in with the hot questions in this episode. Appreciate it.
Love it.
Love it. Thank you. So this Bowie roster, Adley Rutzman being the headliner. I know that there's capacity limits at Double-A this year, but what do you think is the atmosphere going to be like for fans watching him?
I'm going to admit I have not made it out to Bowie yet. Watch a lot of it on MILB TV for sure, but haven't had the chance to make it out to Bowie. Frederick was always the one that's closer to me. I live out here in Virginia, so it was always hop over to Frederick, which, we can't do anymore. But like if there's like some trees out there, like some woods in the outfield, you're going to have people climbing up those trees to watch. If they can't get a ticket to watch Adley Rutzman this year. I think the hottest ticket in all of Birdland this year is going to be DL Hall, Adley Rutzman combo. That's try to plan that now and get your tickets well in advance, because that's going to be an impossible ticket to get.
And inevitably, when Grayson Rodriguez gets promoted, maybe if Adley's still there, who knows? That's also a pretty hot ticket. Yeah, it's just pure excitement to have Adley at Double-A, even though he hasn't had that much time in the minor leagues, doesn't have that many at bats like we've talked about. He's in Double-A now, and Double-A is basically a step away from the major leagues. I know Elias likes to get guys AAA time, but it's whenever they deem him ready, he's there. He's right there knocking on the door. So it's going to be awesome to watch. I can't wait to. That's going to be my MILB TV first appointment viewing is Bowie's opening day.
What I like about this assignment is that he's going to get the opportunity to work with the top prospects like Hall, but then some guys that have more time under their belt like Cody Sedlock. So he's going to get a lot of different looks behind the plate. And I also think that offensively, this might be the right move for him. Whereas a player who was a great hitter in college, A-ball is not going to challenge him. AAA, after not having played in a year, might be a little bit too much of a leap, whereas I think Double-A kind of strikes the middle ground where, I'm sure there's nights where he's going to be challenged, but I don't expect him to be overwhelmed at the plate. And I think that one of the challenges with developing catchers, and hopefully the Orioles somehow strike a balance, is getting both offense and defense to the point where that player is major league ready. But with everything you hear about Rutzman as a prospect, it shouldn't be too hard to get him major league ready sometime, if not by the end of this year, then early next year.
Yeah, just get him comfortable in the plate, get him settled in, and then you can work from there, move him up whenever he starts crushing those guys left and right.
So I do want to talk about Taron Vavra a little bit. He was acquired in the Michael Givens trade last year along with Tyler Nevin. The last time we saw Vavra on the field was in 2019 when he toured through the South Atlantic League with Asheville and won that league's MVP award. Not going to get to go to high A in between low A and double A, but everything we heard about him at the alternate site, both with the Rockies and the Orioles last year, pretty much indicates that he's ready to take on this challenge at double A. As we talked about earlier, the middle infield depth at Norfolk is a little bit stacked, so it might be hard for him to get up too quickly. But I'll start with Bob. What are your expectations for Vavra at Double-A, and do you think that he makes a push for Norfolk at some point?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I probably a mistake in hindsight, but I had him starting at Triple-A in my article I wrote at the end of last year. But I'm high on Vavra. He's one of my favorite types of prospects. Just he doesn't have those the height, the weight, the measurements of a big prospect, but he's just got that hit tool. The hit tool doesn't lie. I feel like a guy like Luis Urias, for the Twins, or he's going to hit, and he's got that natural ability to select his pitches and draw walks. Just love that kind of kind of guy, and he can play a solid second base. I think that's a position the Orioles are in desperate need of right now. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what he's got, and I do expect him to end up in Norfolk by July or August.
Yeah, I'd probably agree, just because you probably assume like Jamai Jones is going to get a call up soon, and then Richie Martin obviously has that experience, so I'm sure the Orioles are going to get a look at him eventually. So Vavra will have to step up there. But I mean, the middle infield, even though Caden Grenier is a guy that I think a lot of Orioles fans are very high on, if you got like Grenier and Vavra as a double play combo with Adley Rutzman behind the plate, like, you want to talk about strength up the middle, is what Michael has been preaching down the minor leagues. Like, that's strength up the middle right there. I'm just excited to see him play because I think he's one of the more underrated guys in the system because we haven't seen him play yet. He did come from Colorado in that fantastic deal that we got for Michael Givens. I keep wanting to say Miguel Castro every single time. But, yeah, I mean, Vavra seems like this super utility type player that, I mean, he may not hit 20 home runs a year, but he can play outfield, infield positions. He can kind of do it all and get on base. So, yeah, he's probably the biggest, other than Adley Rutzman. I mean, that's the biggest prospect name on this Bowie roster as far as hitters go.
And I have to think they want to get Adam Hall to AA Bowie sooner than later. So I think, Vavra moving up to AAA would make room for that.
Now, let me ask you guys this, because this is one theme we're going to see a little bit as we move down this list, which is some middle infield prospects that are maybe starting a level behind where we would have expected them to. How much of that do you think plays into the fact that the Orioles just have so many players at AAA that, and an uncertain major league roster too, especially at second base, that they're going to need some time to sort this out?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, they're trying to figure some things out at the major league level right now, and that's going to trickle down. Same thing with that AAA roster. I mean, just in case there's injuries, like, you don't want to get rid of I go straight to the pitchers for whatever reason, but like, you don't want to just dump a guy like Connor Green, Eric Handhold, Spencer Watkins. You don't want to get rid of those guys because we've seen how, naming the last time the Orioles pitcher went over 5 innings. Like, I mean, that's very rare. So you're going to need a lot of these pitchers. You're going to need a lot of these fielders. We've seen injuries pile up across the league. Injuries, it just seems my entire fantasy team is on the injured list. Like, I'm about to give up with that. But in our league, like, injuries are just absurd this year. And so we're going to see those guys filter out. And these guys at the lower levels, like, I think it's okay. You're going to see older guys at all levels of the minor leagues. So I wouldn't look hard at that this year.
Yeah, I think it's not just happening to the Orioles. I think it's happening to a lot of teams. This missing that year of minor league, play really bunches things up. So, yeah, and how long is Rio Ruiz going to be on the Orioles? So, that's going to free up a roster spot, et cetera, et cetera. But I think depth is just what major league teams need this year, and I think might get a little bit more back to normal the next year.
So Vivek has another question here, which is thoughts on Grenier's promotion to Bowie.
I guess it was either going to be Hall or Grenier, and Grenier's the college guy. He's got a little more solid defense, potentially. So, maybe they just thought Hall had a little bit more to prove at high A. I'm not sure, but I like Hall better. But Grenier, I mean, he's been around. He deserves a chance to prove what he's got. Why not?
Yeah, I don't think Hall was with Delmarva in 2019, so he hasn't played in high A yet. I don't believe. Grenier did. He played with Frederick, and the glove makes you say, like, wow. Like, he's going to give you one good play every single game that just makes your eyes pop because he's that good with the glove. But the strikeouts are just such an issue. But, I mean, just the whole infield as a whole, though. I mean, even a guy like Malquin Canelo, I think, is someone, if you're watching a Bowie Bay Sox game, he's worth taking a moment to watch for sure. So, and Willie Jan's probably the third baseman, but I'm not too familiar with Alexis Torres, I'm going to be honest. But, I mean, I think Grenier, even though he did get promoted to Bowie, I think Grenier is still going to have to fight a little bit for some playing time in that infield.
Yeah, I agree. I think the strikeouts are going to be something that he has to cut back on. But I think a lot of it does come back to the glove, like Nick said. He just is so good out there that I think even if you're not convinced he's going to hit better than, say, 220 at AA, you're comfortable running him out there for a little bit. Just to have that steady presence up the middle, especially with some of the younger pitchers that are going to have there this year that could be part of your future, like Smith, Bradis, Hall. You want a good middle infield behind them, and Grenier does give you that, even if you're not sold on the bat. what he'll do at shortstop is pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with the outfield, I don't know if you guys knew this, but did you guys know that Zach Jarrett's dad is Dale Jarrett, the NASCAR driver?
I did
not.
I was being sarcastic because they say it every single time you watch a game with Zach Jarrett. They have to mention that his dad is Dale Jarrett. But if you did not know, yeah, his dad is NASCAR driver Dale Jarrett. So there you go.
That reminds me when Lucas Giolito was in Hagerstown, and it was always mentioned. I think it was his mother was an actress, and his grandfather was co-creator of Twin Peaks. Every single time Giolito was on the mound, I'd be in the press box, and I would hear the visiting radio announcer say that without fail.
Got to get it in there. Got to get something to talk about. I guess.
It's on the program, so got to say it.
So we'll go down now to High A Aberdeen, and as was expected when Aberdeen took the place of Frederick at High A, we will have some players who last played in Aberdeen in 2019 at the short season level, playing there this year in 2021 at the full season level. So guys like Toby Welk will get promoted from Aberdeen to Aberdeen. But we'll talk about Welk in a minute. Some of the notable pitchers that will be starting off in Aberdeen, Grayson Rodriguez is the headliner. He looks like he'll be part of that rotation, at least initially. Kyle Bronovich, who was one of the pitchers acquired in the Dylan Bundy trade, will be there. In addition, you're going to have Drew Rom, who we last saw put together a pretty good 2019 at Delmarva. Garrett Stallings, who came over from the Angels in the offseason as part of the Jose Iglesias trade, will be there as well. And Easton Lucas, who you may remember was acquired for a player named Jonathan VR, who you may also remember because that trade was kind of controversial at the time, and I don't think most fans remember it now. But we'll now get to see Easton Lucas on the mound at Aberdeen. So I know we'll just start off with Grayson Rodriguez. I'll start, and Nick, I'll let you answer this question first. Are you surprised that he's not in Bowie? And even though he's not, do you expect him to be in High A for very long?
I'm not too surprised, just because, like we mentioned with the other positions, AAA is pretty deep. AA, you've got a big group of guys who still need to prove themselves there. And guys who mastered High A already. And we know Michael Elias wants these prospects to master the level they're at. And I know Rodriguez seemed to really impress at Alt-Site last year, this year during spring training. He's the guy that, evaluators that MLB Pipeline, Fangraphs, these guys are saying that Grayson Rodriguez is probably underrated. And I think a lot of people are really expecting Grayson Rodriguez to really break out. Like, was it The Athletic today that had some piece about Grayson Rodriguez saying, there is no ceiling with this kid. So I think he's getting a lot more hype. I think it's real hype. But if you've got that, he's still very young. He's always been young for his level. And so I don't think you want to rush that at all this year. So I'm not surprised that he's at Aberdeen. Let him go there, but I don't think he's going to be there long for sure. He'll be up by the end of the year. He will be in Bowie for sure.
Absolutely. I think, look, even with the guy that got drafted first overall last year by the Tigers, help me.
Spencer Torkelson.
Yes, he's in High A. He's starting in High A. So, Grayson Rodriguez, I think he'll be in AA by June. I just think they're letting him go step by step as things sort themselves out. What I'm hoping for is that Aberdeen is going with the 6-man rotation, and then he will start the home opener May 11th, so I can see him live. But I think Aberdeen's roster might be the most exciting of the bunch. There's a lot to look for here. Drew Rom, Garrett Stallings going under the radar. I think he could be a breakout guy this year. And you got even guys like Dallas Litcher, Kevin McGee, Ryan Wilson. They all had really good success at Delmarva and Aberdeen in 2019. So, and then a bunch of the 2019 draft picks are here in the bullpen. It's loaded with pitching, and the position players aren't much worse.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's the 2019 draft picks. There's so many of those guys, like you mentioned. That's what I'm most excited to watch with this roster. Even guys that figure to work out of the bullpen, like Clayton McGinnis, Morgan McSweeney, Cade Stroud, Gillespie. I want to see all these guys. I want to see everyone from the 2019 draft class because we didn't get to see too much of them. I think it could be a pretty sneaky good rotation, too, behind Rodriguez if Rom figures it out and starts living up to some of those higher expectations. I think a lot of people have Blaine Knight. It's comforting to know that guys like Eric Longenhagen, when we had him on, he wasn't quick to write off Blaine Knight when we asked him about him, even though he had just disastrous 2019 in Frederick. So like, I don't know how that frame works 5-6 innings every 5 days as a starter, but if you can move him to the bullpen, he can throw 97, 98 miles an hour. That could be interesting. And I think with Aberdeen, it's going to be fun to watch the guys like Brnovich and Stallings. We get to see some of those Angels prospects that came over. So hopefully they can start proving that these deals weren't – the Bundy deal wasn't a quantity over a quality type move.
And with Blaine Knight, one thing we've kind of just speculated about on this show is what the effect of moving high A from Frederick to Aberdeen will be for pitchers, because we have seen some pitchers go to Frederick and just hit a wall and struggle. Blaine Knight was one of them. So he might be an interesting case study for, obviously one of them being how does this layoff affect pitchers? But that's going to be everybody. But in particular, that move from Frederick to Aberdeen. Does he do better in Aberdeen than he did in Frederick? Because we have seen some pitchers there, Alexander Wells being one of them, have really the worst season of their professional careers in Frederick and then get back on track.
Wells, I remember because I'd never seen Wells live. And when he was in Frederick, I was super stoked to go watch his starts in person for once. And I went, I think 3 times I watched him, and he got shelled every single time. I think one of those was against a roster that had I think Luis Robert and Nick Madrigal, maybe I don't know. I know Luis Robert was in that lineup though when they played. Was that Winston-Salem? Used to be the White Sox high affiliate maybe. Of course they shelled him. They're going to shell everybody. But he just looked worse and worse every outing I saw of his. And I was really down on Alex Wells, but then he went to Bowie and shoved. So it is going to be interesting to see how guys adjust. And I think it's going to be really helpful because all of these guys, if not most of them, all pitched in Aberdeen, like you mentioned. So there's going to be a big comfort level there because they know that field, they know that mound, and they know their surroundings already.
Yeah, and I feel like Aberdeen's a pretty pitcher-friendly ballpark. So I think what it is they got rid of Frederick because Frederick was ruining our pitching prospects. That's it.
So going into the position players now to Aberdeen, and this is a pretty talented group. In fact, some of them were names that we mentioned just last week in our preview of hitters. Maverick Hanley will be behind the plate. Andrew Dasbach will probably be the starting first baseman. AJ Graffinino, who was one of the players to be named later in the Tom Malone deal last year, will be there, along with Adam Holland, which should be a pretty good middle infield. But they also have Joey Ortiz, who has been getting a little bit of hype. So much like in Norfolk, we'll see some flexibility with the middle infielders. And then a very good outfield with Shane Fontana, Kyle Stowers, Johnny Roger, and Zach Watson. So overall, this crop of position players in Aberdeen is very impressive.
Yeah, there's no blaring weakness in any one spot in the lineup, I don't think. And yeah, this is what depth will do up the middle. This is what Elias's drafts and his strategies have been, is to get these shortstops, these middle infielders, these center fielders, and then work it out from there. And we're seeing that it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I think this position group, there may not be that real super sexy name that probably more casual fans going to look at and say, I've got to get to Aberdeen and go watch. But we've talked about why Maverick Hanley is so intriguing. Toby Welk, got a lot of fans in 2019, going from D3 to just dominating rookie ball. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does this year now that he's in high A. You mentioned Joey Ortiz. I mean, I pulled up that article again and that MLB pipeline piece, and Matt Blood called him a true shortstop who added some quote unquote noise to his offensive game that completely changed his profile. So, and Matt Blood views Joey Ortiz as an everyday big league shortstop. Those are big words from a man in power in this organization. I think that's huge. So he's definitely intriguing to watch. Adam Hall might be one of the more polarizing prospects in this system. Do you think he can move up the ladder and hit? But I still go back to he was drafted out of high school in Canada. And so I think he's got a little bit more learning. I don't know much about high school baseball in Canada, but I can't imagine it's to the level of, a 17, 18-year-old playing down in the Dominican. I think those are two very different environments. So it's going to take him a while, and he performed really well in Delmarva. And the outfield is interesting. I think that group is a guy who we've talked about. This trio of Stowers, Reiser, and Watson kind of raised the floor. So again, I want to see Stowers has a huge power. Reiser and Watson both have speed and defense. It can hit a little bit. I want to see, does at least one of these guys really step up and kind of take their place behind a Kerstad, McKenna, and Diaz in the rankings.
Yeah, I want to touch on what you said about Hall because I know that for some reason people have seen down on Hall, and as I've said repeatedly, I think that it has to do with the fact you just didn't see him at all last year, and other middle infielders have come in. But in terms of his speed, I don't know there's a lot of competition in the Orioles farm system. I don't know there's a lot of better base runners. I don't know there's a lot of players in the minor leagues system right now that can match Adam Hall with his speed. So he really does need to show that he can hit the ball hard enough to succeed at the higher levels. Because I know that's a question with him. But at the same time, a guy that can handle both sides of the bag at second base competently with that speed and the fact that he's still only 21, to me, he's one of the better players on this roster for the position players, at least.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it might be just because he doesn't, you're not going to see the home run numbers when you're looking at the box score. He doesn't hit for much power, but if he can at least maybe get some doubles power in there, he could be a very poor man's Trey Turner, more of a second baseman maybe, but he can hit a little bit for contact, and he's got a decent eye at the plate, plus his speed, like you said. So I'm not down on him at all.
Yeah, I think one name I know you see a lot when they do like which prospect in each system is the fastest, most power, like highest tools in each system. Like Mason Janvrin is a guy you see a lot that people plug in for the Orioles when you're talking about speed. But I mean, Hall, McKenna has speed, Mullins has speed, but I think with those two guys, they never really were able to turn it into stolen bases. But like Adam Hall has like 50, 60 stolen bases in the last two seasons. And I pulled up his numbers here in Delmarva in 2019. He had a 133 WRC plus, 33 stolen bases, and he hit 298. And that was his real first full season of pro ball because he missed most of 2018. So, but yeah, like that ISO power is like non-existent. It's mostly singles. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of are hesitant when it comes to Adam Hall.
Yeah, to your point about the stolen bases, over his career, it's 186 games since 2017. Overall, he's had 70 stolen base attempts, only been caught 14 times. So 56 career steals. It's a pretty good rate.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so Adam Hall is getting a lot of hype, but from us at least. But I think the most hype among the middle infield prospects in the system belongs in Delmarva, which is why I'm actually going to start with the position players there. Because the infield there, Gunnar Henderson, now a top 100 prospect according to Baseball America, and a player that all three of us are very high on, will be there. And he'll be joined by Daryl Hernandez, J.D. Mundy, Anthony Servideo, and Jordan Westberg in Delmarva. So if you listen to me rattle off those names, you just heard 4 shortstops mentioned, and 4 pretty good ones. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Shorebirds fit all of these bats into the lineup. But you have the consensus 2 best shortstop prospects in the system there in Henderson and Westberg. Long-term, there's questions about whether or not those guys will stick at the position, but they're there for now. Daryl Hernandez will be there, and Anthony Servideo. So we'll just start with this group here. Who does play shortstop?
JD Mundy, baby. More like JD Mundinez. No, I think Gunnar Henderson will play short most nights. I think he'll get, I wouldn't say the ball, because I do think there's going to be pretty evenly split between all the infield positions for all those guys. I think one of them's going to have to DH every night. One of them's going to have to play second, one of them's going to have to play third. But I think Gunnar Henderson, I think you should do the guy with the most highest ceiling, and who you have to figure out if he can stick at shortstop. What better way to find out than to play him at shortstop? So I do think Gunnar will get a little bit more than the rest, but they'll all see their time there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of mixing and matching there because, I mean, the catchers is Jordan Cannon and Ramon Rodriguez, who was a recent minor league signing from the Dodgers. Like, you're not putting one at catcher and one DH in there. JD Mundy would obviously be your DH. I mean, this is a guy, an undrafted free agent after the 2020 draft at a Radford, who I think Stephen Loftus, our BSL colleague, I pulled up his article where he did a breakdown of all the UDFA guys after the draft. And he had like 40-something% of JD Mundy's at bats ended in a walk, strikeout, or home run. So, I mean, he is a real 3 true outcome guy. So that leaves like no one else to play first base. I mean, he's your first baseman. So it is like I don't know. I think Gunnar Henderson does get shortstop, and maybe Westberg gets third base a lot. I think that might be a common. And then Hernandez and Servideo, I don't know, splitting time at second base. I'm sitting here looking at names and I can't put it together. I don't know.
It's hard to figure out. I mean, Servideo did have time in the outfield at college, so I suspect he will go out there a little bit. But he also had such good reports coming out of the draft last year about his defense. It would be a shame to not give him at least some time at shortstop.
Yeah.
I
think Gunnar will see time at third. They'll give him a little bit of time. So you'll get to see him test his arm over there. And yeah, like Eric says, I think Hernandez will play second base for the most part.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, though. And this is a lot of where we talk about building depth in the system. You want to see the Orioles start to build up their infield depth. And right now at the lower levels of the minors, you're seeing it with this roster that's going to be at Aberdeen, in Delmarva. And not to mention, you have a guy like Kobe Mayo not starting here as a full season affiliate. So there's even more talent behind these names.
Oh, yeah. And just go ahead, Nick. Sorry.
I was just saying, I got scared. He was looking over the roster. I was like, where's Kobe Mayo? And I was like, oh, yeah, he's like 16 years old. It's okay.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, I'm excited for this team for the second half of the season, when I'm assuming we'll start to see those international guys like Luis Gonzalez and Luis Ortiz, and those kind of guys show up. I think, maybe they'll play some GCL for the most part, but you might see some guys like Steven Acevedo show up here. No Berth Romero, the guys we got in the Andrew Cashner trade. That's going to be exciting for me once you start seeing the Elias international guys make their way stateside.
Yeah, because looking at that outfield, I mean, it's JC Encarnacion, who we were looking up before we came on. He's never played the outfield before in his minor league career. He's played third base, first base, and a little bit of shortstop when he was like 17 years old. So now they got him in the outfield. You got Hudson Haskin, who's a 2020 draft pick, which I'm anxious to see. And this is a guy, what was he? I'll try to look. I'm thinking, never mind. Yeah, Hudson Haskin, yeah, second round pick out of Tulane. There we go. Put my thoughts together. Like, he was a second round pick out of Tulane in this 2020 draft. I think that's a bold move. So of course the Orioles must be super high on him. So that's gonna be fun to see. But then the other outfielders are Dylan Harris, who was an undrafted free agent out of UNC, Trevor Keehee. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I apologize. Had to look him up. He was a 36th round draft pick last year, 2019, out of the Colorado School of the Mines. And then Dorian Turchin is a guy we've seen before.
He's been around, yeah.
Yeah, he's a veteran, but maybe those international guys will be up soon. And so a lot of these guys are just placeholders for right now.
Yeah, hopefully Encarnacion has just been doing nothing but outfield drills since the end of the 2019 season.
It's interesting because Encarnacion went from one of those guys who was really under a microscope because he came over from the Braves in that Kevin Gausman, Darren O'Day trade, which soon I'm just going to start calling the Bruce Zimmerman trade. But yeah, he came over in that deal, and I think there were some expectations because he was having a good year in low A at the time that he would really take off. 2019, he struggled. So you want to see the bat come along, but I'm going to be curious to see how he looks in the outfield. And honestly, if he even gets much time out there. I'm wondering if they're not going to stick him at DH for a little bit, see if he can get the bat going and get him up to high A.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and he had a ceiling. I mean, he was a raw prospect with the ceiling when we got him. So, hopefully he can break out with the bat at least.
Just to answer a question from feedback here, yes, Gene Carmona did come over in the scope deal. Carmona was not on an opening day roster.
Not a good sign.
Yeah, hopefully we'll hear something about him soon and hopefully see him on a roster. Moving on over to the pitching staff in Delmarva. It's not quite up to the level of some of the staffs that we've mentioned so far tonight, but there's still some pretty good arms in here. You have Zach Peak, who came over in the Dylan Bundy trade and is a guy we've talked about a lot on this show as someone we're excited to watch. Leonardo Rodriguez will be there as well. Adam Stauffer, who coming into 2020 was kind of a fringe top 30 guy, and I think was actually in the top 30 according to some outlets. I believe we had him in there as well.
This outlet right here.
Yeah. We had him in our top 30 going into 2019, and then with the number of players that were brought into the system over 2020, he got bumped, but he's still going to be an intriguing name to watch this year, and could conceivably work his way back in the top 30. Sultan Perkins is another guy that I have my eye on, and I'm sure you both do, Nick and Bob, to see what he does there. So overall, Delmarva has got some good arms, even if you don't have a DL Hall or Grayson Rodriguez starting there this year.
Yeah,
it's a group.
I think this could be where you see a lot of that piggybacking that Nick was talking about earlier. I mean, you have guys like Griffin McLarty, Ryan Conroy, Jensen Elliott, like a bunch of those 2019 guys, right? So, and they had some success at Aberdeen and even Delmarva a little bit in 2019. So there's some, potential upside there. But yeah, Leonardo Rodriguez should have a lot of success in Delmarva. I thought he'd be in Aberdeen, but he's not. Zach Peak could have been at Aberdeen. He's been showing some good stuff in the offseason, so be exciting to see him. And I've been a big Adam Stauffer fan since I saw him pitch in Aberdeen personally. And yeah, it's not an exciting group, but there's definitely some interesting names to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, Rodriguez and Stauffer are also both like 6'7", 6'8". So you got a lot of tall guys in this Delmarva pitching staff. And Rodriguez is fun just because, Rodriguez is fun just because he has all the stuff, and it looks like he can dominate the lower levels of minor leagues. But a lot of times, it looks like he doesn't know where the ball is going once he releases it. So if he puts that together, there's going to be a little bit something there. But I think the biggest group with this Delmarva rotation and pitching staff are the undrafted free agents. They're pretty much all here. Shane Davis, another 757 Hampton Roads guy, so I'm going to root for him. Ryan Watson. Thomas Gerard was a guy that I know a lot of Orioles fans. He got some social media hype. Pitching ninja guy out of Duke because of his slider is just disgusting. Brandon Young is another one of those really tall guys that they got after the draft out of Louisiana Monroe. Yeah, I mean, Zach Peak is going to be fun. Sheldon Perkins, of course, my guy. I watched every single outing of his in college. Just a dude on the mound for sure. And Jake Prezina, apologies for that last name pronunciation as well. A local high school product we've highlighted before, I think in the pitching preview episode. He's pitched 2 years at the GCL, didn't give up a home run. So he's somebody to watch for sure. So it's young with a whole lot of question marks. So if you're really into minor league baseball and you want to find some gems, Delmarva pitchers are where you go.
Yeah, but this could be where someone really breaks through that we don't know about, to the extent that they could show. So that's what I'm excited about to see.
So now that we've run down the rosters, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, if you go at BSL on the Verge on Twitter, we do have the article that Steve Molesky put up over at Masson today that will give you the rosters of every full season team in the Orioles farm system. So you can go check that out there, but we do want to take a few minutes to discuss some of the names that are now on the roster. Heston Kerstad is not on an opening day roster, which is not a surprise. Kerstad is battling his way back from myocarditis and was in fact just medically cleared to report to the alternate site in Bowie a couple weeks ago. As we mentioned on our show last week, Kerstad is expected to go to Sarasota and rehab and could be a couple months out from appearing in game action, but hopefully he can make a good recovery and gets out there soon. The other big name is Michael Bauman, who a lot of people were expecting to be in Norfolk's rotation. He is not starting the year at any of the affiliates, and Molesky reported today that they're expecting to get more clarity on him at the beginning of next week. What's alarming about Bauman is that there were reports of him having elbow issues last year at the alternate site towards the end. All reports were that was not a serious concern, and we have not heard anything to contradict that since then. So I don't want to speculate about his health, but still disappointing that Bauman's not going to be on the roster out of the gate. Hopefully, though, it's not a whole lot longer before we see him.
I'm just wondering if they're slow playing him a little bit. Maybe they want to limit his innings just to ease him in from that injury last year, and maybe he starts a few weeks or a month behind everybody else just to kind of, limit his innings, like I said. So hopefully that's what it is, and he didn't re-aggravate anything.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew what Kerstad's situation was. That's obviously nothing to worry about right now. But yeah, the big thing is Bauman. I think that is a little bit shocking just because you do have that arm injury with a young, exciting pitching prospect and they shut him down. And yeah, we haven't heard anything bad since then, but I mean, we also haven't really seen him. I don't think did he make an appearance in spring training? I don't think he ever did. No. So, I mean, we haven't seen him since. And I mean, of course, the Orioles have been so hush-hush about everything over the last year. So more so than other teams even during these COVID times. And so I don't want to say I'm troubled that we haven't heard anything. I hope it is just taking it slow with him. And he'll be in Bowie or Norfolk. It should be Norfolk. He'll be in Norfolk in a month or so, but I don't know. Well, I'm going to wait and see there until we hear something more.
There was that report of Brandon Hyde saying he was very impressed by Michael Bauman's bullpen sessions in the spring, but he never actually got into a game. And the Mad Behemoth is wondering if we should put Greg Cullen's face on a milk carton because he's missing.
Yeah, no updates that I have seen on Colin today about where he is, but Colin was certainly a name we had our eye on. He was one of the players that came along with AJ Graffinino in that trade for Tom Malone between the Orioles and the Braves last year. They were both players to be named later, so the Orioles didn't acquire them until the offseason. But yeah, there's been no updates on where Colin is starting the year and when we could expect him at one of the full season affiliates.
Yeah, and I just wonder if it's. Sorry, go ahead, Nick. Yeah. My bad.
I was gonna say. I mean, he's not a top prospect, but still, he's a guy who. I mean, his on-base percentage down the minor leagues is like pushing 400, and there have been some. If you look up some reports on him, I mean, they note his on-base ability is fantastic. So that is a guy, and he can play second base as well. So that is a guy who maybe you'd like to have as a depth piece down the minor leagues. And so be interesting to see where he's at. He's just hanging back in Sarasota for a little bit longer to get some more work in, but
you just never know what kind of shape these guys came into the minor league spring training as far as maybe not just like physical shape, but injuries. Maybe he has a nagging injury that's causing him to start a little bit late. You just never know. I don't think it's a case of him being cut or just not ready yet. I think it has to be injury related as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some clarity on that between now and when the minor league season starts, because Colin was someone that we were interested in watching for some of the reasons that Nick and Bob mentioned, primarily that on-base ability and the hope that maybe the Orioles could tap into his power a little bit, which is a theme we're going to hear a lot of this year with players like Tyler Nevin, Maverick Handley, who we talked about a little bit on our last show. But hopefully it won't be a whole lot longer and we'll see Colin somewhere. So we're going to wrap up this discussion on the rosters really just by focusing on overall on the team that excites us the most. And I'll start with Bob. You can pick one roster that if you just had to see one game this year, you would go watch that team, or if you just have general thoughts about the roster, you can let the listeners know now.
Yeah, it's not just because it's the closest one to me, and I can go there basically whenever I feel like driving 20 minutes up the road, but it's Aberdeen for me. Just they don't have like Nick said, the sexy names, but like Adley Rutzman and DL Hall, but they do have Grayson Rodriguez, and they have a nice, well-rounded pitching staff and position players. So I'll go with Aberdeen for sure.
Another tough one. Let's see. I think. Yeah, I mean, for my own personal reasons. Well, first of all, as far as like players missing, also there's no Ricky Ramirez on any of these rosters. Minor league Rule 5 pick out of Minnesota, and I just want to know where Ricky Ramirez is. That's all I'm saying. No, but he's for my own personal reasons, I would say Delmarva because of the pitching staff. Just because like those guys excite me. Like I really want to see what Shane Davis does. Like call me weird, call me whatever. Like I want to watch Shane Davis and Brandon Young and those guys pitch. And it's Zach Peak and Shelton Perkins are like 95% of the reason why if I could go to Delmarva, but they're 4.5 hours away. So I can't go to Delmarva every single day. But I would be there. But I think as far as like the future of the Baltimore Orioles goes and this major league roster, I'm paying most close attention to Bowie, I think, just because I want to see, does DL Hall limit those walks? Can Brendan Hannafy take those improved secondaries we've heard so much about and turn things around? What is Kyle Bradis? What does he bring to the table? Even guys like Nick Vespi and Kevin Smith, do one or both of those guys show up at the back end of that rotation? And then on the offensive side, it's Terrin Vavra. I want to see what kind of player this guy is, because so many people that I think all of us respect very much in the industry are pretty high on him. So I want to see, is he as good as advertised or even better?
Yeah, I agree. I think that both of those rosters are going to be good to watch. For me, it's Delmarva. I just look at this infield and I'm fascinated by it because there's so much talent there. And you just have all of these shortstops. And even if all of them don't project at shortstop long term, that still indicates some athleticism when you look at guys like Daryl Hernandez, Gunnar Henderson, Anthony Servideo, and Jordan Westberg. So to see how they're going to fit them into the lineup each night and move them around is going to be interesting to watch, not to mention that we're going to get to answer some of the questions we've had for a while now. Can Jordan Westberg tap into that raw power and maybe bring down the strikeouts a little bit? How good is Gunnar Henderson? Is that bad as advanced as we keep hearing? Were Anthony Servidio's improvements at the plate last college season, which was shortened, for real? And is this a guy that teams are going to look back on the draft a few years from now and think the Orioles got a steal picking him up where they did? So there's a lot that we're going to learn, and not to mention Hernandez, a younger guy who draws rave reviews from people in the industry we respect, including Eric Longenhagen. So I'm really curious to watch this roster, but I also do think that Norfolk's going to be worth keeping a close eye on. And not just because those players are next in line for when something does happen at the major league level, but you have real talent there. You have Yusniel Diaz there. You have Ryan McKenna, who I will say I thought looked decent in his time in the major leagues this year, and now he's going to get the opportunity to do what I think the Orioles need to let him do, which is lead off and play center field every day. And Jamai Jones, I liked a little bit I saw of him in spring training. The numbers we're seeing out of the alternate site are really good, and there's a big hole at second base in the major leagues right now. And if Jamai Jones looks good with the glove and he's hitting the ball well, he may very well fill that hole sometime here in the next few weeks or months. And then not to mention, you've got Ryland Bannon there. You've got Tyler Nevin. That's a pretty good roster, and it'll get even better when Adley Rutzman's there.
It's here. It's real. It's happening.
All four are interesting. There's not like a dud in the bunch. So I'm going to be checking all them box scores every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we'll have our coverage here all season long on the Verge, covering the minor league season. And we will be back next Wednesday with our next new episode. In the meantime, you can continue to follow us on Twitter at BSL on the Verge. Continue to check out BaltimoreSportsAndLife.com for the latest articles on the Orioles, Ravens, college sports, and some professional soccer as well. Be sure to join the message board there. And Nick, we still have our contest running, correct?
Yeah, we got about 80 entries, I think, for a free ticket giveaway. So whichever roster you found most exciting, you can go watch them for free. I'll pick a winner later tonight because emergency podcast delayed that. But we'll pick a winner tonight, and we'll get hook them up some free tickets.
Yeah, be sure to keep an eye on that. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Sped, and you've been listening to On the Verge.